Whether at home or work, life is about relationships. Welcome to Small Change, Big Dividends with your host, Branch Isole. Small Change, Big Dividends shares steps, tools, and tips for personal career and spiritual growth. So please welcome the host of Small Change, Big Dividends, Branch Isole.
There's a commonality of themes everyone encounters in life. These lessons can be both catalysts or outcomes from our choices. Think of it this way. Every choice you make, you're responding to one or more of these 5 motivators: love, want, need, status, or fear of loss. These are the emotional sparks behind every decision we make. One or more of these is always behind our efforts by our actions, in response to the people, events, and circumstances we encounter in our daily life. We never decide to act without measurable effect from one or more of these 5, for each of these is at the core of our desires. Struggle is a constant of the human condition, regardless of influences, and as such, along every path exists or is experienced struggle. Emotional stress is often a fallout or result of this struggle, manifested from our choices and decisions rooted in these 5 motivators. Coming to you from deep in the forest near the banks of the Ouachita River, you're watching and listening to Small Changes, Big Dividends on the Bold Brave Media TV and Talk Global Network. I'm your host, Branch Isole, and you are my featured guest. Small Changes, Big Dividend is a show where your questions are part of the program. So if you have a question, you can call us live during the show or email your question to my website, branchisole.com. And thanks for joining me today. On Small Changes, Big Dividends, we talk about personal, career, and spiritual Christianity essentials for growth-filled living. Each week, I share my na'o with listeners from around the world. Today, I'm going to share small changes that can pay big dividends in your relationships and in your life. Because life is about relationships, but it's healthy relationships that encourage and embrace growth. Today, we're talking about struggle and its emotional stress, or more specifically, why struggle exists and how to reduce or eliminate it. Mankind has yet to fully understand or embrace evidence that repeatedly shows that our existence is dependent and codependent on working together. Our very existence is defined by differences. And as communities strive to resolve issues, cooperating resolutions seldom are easily or willingly accepted. And yet, it's our differences, hand in hand with technology, that makes our world go round and keeps civilization moving forward. You see, the universe is always in balance. So too the fundamentals of life on this small planet. Pains are counterbalanced by scope and structure of progress. Do we have pain and suffering? Yes. Will we always have pain and suffering? Yes. Why? It's our nature to strive for success as well as survival. And in doing so, we produce actions that offer different choices and decisions. However, the byproducts of this inertia include stress, struggle, pressure, and conflicts. That's the global view. But what about you and me? What about each of us as individuals? We only have effective control over our responses to people, events, and circumstances that we come into contact with on a daily basis. In this small sphere of influence that we identify as our life, how can we reduce daily struggle? And why is it we don't realize how much suffering can be eliminated or sidestepped? Although the answers to these are relatively easy to address, the why is more easily understood than the how it takes to achieve it. We each have a power to decide what our response will be in any given situation. And as such, we experience, and the experiences that we have can become prime motivators to remind us of what we already know. One or more possible outcomes from any previous action. That is, we become familiar with suffering caused or experienced by previous decisions that we've made in similar situations. So why do we choose that response? And what were its consequences? You see, the why is prompted and answered by the expectations of a specific result. The how is a little more complex because the more expectant or anticipated outcomes of our decisions we desire, the better prepared we are to tackle this how. The how of actually reducing or eliminating struggle from our lives. At this point, it's important to remember that pain and suffering are generally encapsulated as emotional stress or discomfort associated with the manifested actions through our choices and decisions. The why determines our action of choice. The how is its implementation. Ultimately, this process either contributes to additional struggle and stress, or it puts us on a path of reduction and possible elimination of those same struggles and stress. The difference is in how we cope or adjust to each future decision in light of the outcomes we already know or have experienced previously. Even if we are growing and moving forward, meaning we're encountering less stress and fewer struggles, by avoiding past behaviors and choices, the how of reducing or eliminating struggle in daily life is the one we are trying to overcome. First, we do this by making better choices, more informed information and decisions based again on past experiences and outcomes. It's been said, experience is the best teacher, but only if we actually learned the lesson from that experience. So how do we assimilate enough information and a more emotional fortitude to make better or more positive future choices in similar situations? How do we do this? We do it by not repeating behaviors and choices we know from prior activities that will or most likely will result in negative, harmful, or hurtful outcomes. First comes the emotion, then comes the choice, then the action, and finally the results or consequences. We know the why by expectation, and now we know the how by choice. We can now predict and know future actions that produce positive results. And the differences between positive or negative outcomes either dissipates or exacerbates our struggle. And therefore, any emotional stress that's associated with the struggle as a result of those choices or outcomes. You see, making positive choices in future situations based on prior firsthand knowledge allows for review prior to execution. We learn to do this with each corresponding lesson in life that may be thrown at us during our daily routine. And with each succeeding lesson learned, we now can avoid negativity by accepting or adjusting to our previously known positive results. I know it sounds easy and it may seem hard, but actually it is easier than we think. It's an exercise in mental gymnastics that we go through with every choice or decision before taking action. You see, recall and remembrance tempers with a dose of new possibility, and this puts us in charge of deciding or choosing a new or different way to respond. Ultimately, it's our responsibility to choose more wisely than we may have in the past. Did our prior choice result in pain and suffering, heartache or heartbreak, costly or divisive ramifications? Do we want to expect the same outcomes or results again? Obviously, if they were negative, we do not. But when we know and understand the why, we are better prepared to implement and accept the how. With these two in combination, future progress will result in fewer struggles, and therefore emotional stress will be lessened with every opportunity. You see, the more we apply this systematic process, the more fundamentally simple avoiding struggle can become. And it's no longer repetition and suffering through that we now experience with a new choice. We learn it's easier to walk around a hole of adversity than trying to dig ourselves out. So, our first new recourse is to draw upon previous experiences and efforts made to make each new choice or decision a positive outcome. Because it's always important to learn a lesson from previous experiences rather than reveal negative fallout that we may experience again. With our first lesson learned and our first responses from past events firmly grounded in our mind, we can now take steps that employ a power to alert us to the negative potential consequences of a new choice or decision, even before we pull the trigger on a decided course of action. But what is this next step of understanding? It's a gift of premonition because it's now provided by new spiritual grounding that we've accepted and begun in our lives. And this spiritual grounding is available for us to know and use with our fully reactivated spiritual connection to God through Jesus Christ. This is accomplished by spiritual recognition from our invitation to Jesus to send his spirit to abide with ours. Because when we reactivate our spiritual essence to its full capacity and call upon his spirit within us in times of need or relief, we now discover a preview of negative outcomes for any future choice or decision is actually revealed to us before we ever commit to, respond to, or act upon the choice ahead. As full-fledged children of God, once again, by a reactivated spiritual connection, we now possess the right and privilege to call upon his spirit within us and expect a response for us to consider. before we ever venture into new or repeated options. You see, it's through his spiritual guidance within that we are reminded of previous outcomes from the past or present choices that we have in Life 101. We still possess free will to choose which path we will travel. However, by calling on his spiritual counsel, he gives us the spiritual strength to resist actions we now know inherently are not in our best interest. We are now given a heads up, so to speak, before any current decision or choice which we may suffer emotional fallout and consequences. And as a result, the choice to stop or proceed ahead is totally ours. You see, recognition to acknowledge and embrace this nuance of new wisdom resides in Life 101A. You must likely have experienced a lifetime of consequences and outcomes up to now in Life 101, because that's the life that we're born into and the one that we operate daily as we go through our activities. Now you only need to reflect on how the journey has been up to now to decide if a future without stress, struggle, pressure, and conflict in Life 101A is a desirable path for you or not. I invite you to make these small changes in your life today that will pay big dividends in your life tomorrow. We're going to pause for our first commercial break. When we return, we're going to look at this week's prophecy segment and the questions that we have from audience listeners. You're watching and listening Small Changes, Big Dividends on the Bold Brave Media TV and Talk Global Network. I'm your host, Branch Isole, and I'll be right back.
What if there were a super tiny device that could diagnose the brain and is smaller than a single human hair? What if you could see inside the brain to help an epilepsy patient during surgery or to help the fight against Parkinson's disease? Dr. Patricia Broderick is proud to announce the Broderick Probe, a biomedical and electronic breakthrough. Imagine a probe to help with the understanding and potential cure of brain-related diseases. To learn more, listen live to the Easy Sense radio show with host Dr. Broderick, Wednesdays 7 p.m. Eastern on the Bold Brave Media Network and TuneIn Radio. And to help support the Broderick Foundation, please go to EasySense.com and learn how, with your help, we can fight these horrific brain disorders. That's EasySense.com to learn more and help support the Broderick Foundation. Author, radio show host, and coach John M. Hawkins reveals strategies to help gain perspective, build confidence, find clarity, achieve goals. John M. Hawkins' new book, Coached to Greatness, Unlock Your Full Potential with Limitless Growth, published by iUniverse. Hawkins reveals strategies to help readers accomplish more. He believes the book can coach them to greatness. Hawkins says that the best athletes get to the top of their sport with the help of coaches, mentors, and others. He shares guidance that helps readers reflect on what motivates them. We discover and assess their core values, philosophies, and competencies, find settings that allow them to be the most productive, and track their progress towards accomplishing goals. Listen to John Hawkins' My Strategy, Saturdays, 1 p.m. Eastern on the BBM Global Network and TuneIn Radio.
Welcome back. You're listening and watching Small Changes, Big Dividends. I'm your host, Branch Isole. This week's prophecy segment deals with the seals, trumpets, and bowls described in the book of Revelation. You know, from our vantage point today, the Gaza conflict between Israel and Hamas is a prelude to the coming 7-year tribulation period that will cause damage and destruction across the earth. At the end of the Ezekiel War Treaty, God's love is so great, He's given us prophecy that reveal coming events so that we can avoid the suffering and emotional stress that lay ahead. God has promised to reveal end-time events that the entire world will witness, and we've been talking about those in some of our previous episodes. Behind prophecy are three often misunderstood descriptions that confuse and confound many readers. These are the seals, trumpets, and bowls. Some texts call them vials. These three are pivotal to the end times and last day events during the 7-year tribulation period. The book of Revelation reveals that Jesus Christ is in heaven holding a scroll given to him by God the Father. This scroll is bound by 7 seals. Now, for those of you who may be too young to remember, but these seals are a wax stamp that seals a document closed. This is the way all important legal documents in centuries past were bound closed with a wax seal over the opening. The scroll that Jesus holds is secured by 7 seals, and only he has the power to unseal the scroll. When he does, each one of the reveals of an event that leads to or is key to the end times is what's shown and what's revealed by the breaking of the seals. The first 4 seals involve a horse and a rider, and these are known as the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse. When the first seal is unleashed, the rider comes out, and it is Jesus Christ on his way to victory. When the second seal is broken, a red horse with the rider comes out, and he represents war. The third rider is on a black horse, and he represents justice. The fourth rider is on a pale horse, and he brings with him death. When the fifth seal is broken, the martyrs in heaven who died for and in Christ's name are revealed to John. With the sixth seal broken, there's a great earthquake. And when the seventh seal is broken, the start of the 7 years tribulation is initiated. There are also 7 trumpets which will each sound in heaven, and 7 bowls of judgment which will be unleashed and unpoured on the earth. As each trumpet is blown, a judgment will be poured out with a variety of events of destruction taking place. These first 4 trumpets are heard during the tribulation's first 3.5 years. The final 3 trumpets will be heard during the Great Tribulation years, or the last 3.5 years. With the sounding of each trumpet proceeds separate events with increasing devastation and calamity. For mid-trib believers, the sounding of this 5th trumpet signals the start of the Great Tribulation, that is, the last 3.5 years of the 7 years total. When God concerns himself exclusively with the remnant of Israel at mid-tribulation, when the 5th trumpet is blown, and he literally abandons the rest of the world to fend and survive for itself without him. For his interests are going to be with the remnant of Israel. At the sounding of the 6th trumpet, the preparations on earth for the Battle of Armageddon will take place. And finally, the 7th trumpet announces Jesus Christ's second coming. I'm often asked why I believe the rapture is a mid-tribulation event at the sound of the fifth trumpet's blowing. We all learn from our earliest age about the power of the world's ways. We all are like little Pinocchios, drawn to and enamored by the glitz, glamour, and glitter of the world. And the world encourages us to buy into its ways at every opportunity. From our earliest memories, we covet the things of the world. And as we embrace the world's ways, it's often difficult for us to reconcile what we learn or hear about spirituality when we are so involved in a carnal lifestyle. Most people, regardless of their religion, have a fundamental recognition of that religion's practices. And at the same time, we're trying to incorporate our daily life with a knowledge of our religion. But it's like yin and yang or a two-sided coin. The world's ways and spirituality are separate but conjoined essential life entities. Because we're physical beings in a physical world, our prime motivations are linked to the ways and the things of our world. It's our physical nature. However, the hypocrisy of every religion wears on its faithful, leaving us to wonder, if I believe in the love of God is so great, is he willing to give every living soul a chance to hear the gospel and hear it again in light of different circumstances or experiences that they encountered in life? There are multitudes of self-proclaimed Christians, past and present, who've not understood the true meaning of repentance. You see, repentance means changed future behavior. Let me say that again. Changed future behavior, meaning no repetition, anytime, anywhere in the future. Those expecting a pre-tribulation rapture may well be disappointed. I believe that God is offering his unrepentant children a second chance to get right with him again. Just as God promised Noah that the world would never experience another magnitude flood that covered the world, he also promises his believing children alive in every nation will not experience the great tribulation years. Now, whether the tribulation happens pre-trib, post-trib, or mid-trib, the point is you don't want to miss it. And the mid-trib tribulation offers those who have fallen away, that is, believers and Christians who claim to believe, but don't act Christ-like in their lives, they're still embracing the world. This mid-trib rapture allows people who have repented but not repented by their actions that second chance. Now, this week's prophecy question comes from Ted in Syracuse, New York. And Ted asks, is John the Baptist the same John that's in the Gospel, the fourth book? It's a great question, Ted. Thanks for asking. Bible names are interesting, and many in the Old Testament are unfamiliar or even unrecognizable and unpronounceable to us. Names in the New Testament are ones that we're much more familiar with, and many are still in use all these centuries later. The question that John is asking about is two different men with the same name. And although they both lived in the same time and the same area, John the Baptist was a cousin to Jesus. Both of their mothers were pregnant at the same time. John got his moniker the Baptist due to his baptizing activities at the Jordan River in Christ's name, in the coming Christ. John the Baptist was a herald announcing the coming of the Messiah. The other John in question is the author of the fourth New Testament Gospel, the book of John. He's also the author of the book of Revelation. In Scripture, he's also known as John the Beloved, and this John is one of three persons who witnessed Jesus' transfiguration. Also author of the Bible, the book of Revelation, is where we find the largest amount of end times and last days information. So this is the John who's the author of the fourth book of the Gospel and the book of Revelation. Ted, thanks for your question. I hope this identifies the two different Johns in the New Testament for you. If you have a question, email it to my website, branchisole.com, and we'll include it in the following week's show. Time for our second commercial break. When we come back, we've got one more question from Billy in Boise, Idaho. You're watching and listening Small Changes, Big Dividends on the Bold Brave TV and Talk Global Network. I'm your host, Branch Isole, and we'll be right back.
Did you know that your beliefs create your entire reality, but it's the subconscious beliefs that do most of the creating? Belief shifter and life coach Shiraz can help you identify those limiting beliefs and eliminate them, often in a single session.
Like, it was almost instant, like I had relief right away.
Creating better health, relationships, careers, and finances. Let Shiraz help you step out of safety and into awareness.
Definitely something's happening. It's like a flow inside. It feels good.
Whether in person or online, Shiraz provides personal coaching, belief shifting. Visit Shiraz at energeticmagic.com or call 416-529-7429. Energetic Magic on the BBM Global Network, Tuesdays at 7 p.m. Eastern. Find your greater happiness. Be well. Be aware. Be magical.
Are you struggling to care for elderly parents or a spouse? Do you wonder if being a caregiver is making you sick? Are you worried about taking time off work to care for elderly parents and balance work, life, and caregiving? Has caregiving become exhausting and emotionally draining? Are you an aging adult who wants to remain independent, but you're not sure how? I'm Pamela D. Wilson. Join me for the Caring Generation radio show for caregivers and aging adults, Wednesday evenings, 6 Pacific, 7 Mountain, 8 Central, and 9 Eastern, where I answer these questions and share tips for managing stress, family relationships, health, well-being, and more. Podcasts and transcripts of The Caring Generation are on my website, PamelaDWilson.com, plus my caregiving library, online caregiver support programs, and programs for corporations interested in supporting working caregivers. Help, hope, and support for caregivers is here on The Caring Generation and PamelaDWilson.com.
Welcome back. You're watching and listening to Small Changes, Big Dividends. I'm your host, Branch Isole. This week's question comes from Billy in Boise, Idaho. Billy asks, what is manifesting? I listen to podcasts and hear them talk about manifesting. Can you explain it to me? Billy, thanks for asking. I'll do the best I can. Manifesting is taking the best and most appropriate actions today to make your dream come true tomorrow. Now, what do I mean? We all have dreams and desires that we want to be our future. But how do we go about making those dreams and desires a reality? Manifesting is the process whereby we first see in our mind's eye, meaning that we visualize or see with our mind's eye that future time when we're living that dream. So, how do we make manifesting work for us? Well, first, you see in your mind the images that make your future the reality that you want, that you dream of. That's the long term or the end goal. Now, can we mentally see with our mind's eye what your future reality really looks like? Well, not exactly, but you have a vision in mind, or you have a thought in mind of what that dream would be if it became your reality. And you'll recognize it when you get there. So, how do we go about getting to that place where we see ourselves living out that dream? Well, the easiest way is we work backwards. Step one, we see the end goal or the image or the vision. Step two, we see the end goal again, but we see it with more specifics, more refinement, and deeper identification. You see, the more detail we can see in our mind, the more clearly the whole picture becomes. It's like putting together a puzzle. We have an image and a desire, and we know what it looks like when we are experiencing it, but we have to put all of the pieces together in order to get to that place. You'll always be mentally revisiting that end goal image. But each time you revisit it, it may be new or a reworked version of that end goal. Why? Because as we get closer to that end goal, we learn more and more, we refine more and more what kind of events must take place for that big picture end goal to be our reality. As we move forward in life and specifics of that end goal come into mental view, we have a more cognizant image of what kinds of events and circumstances in our current daily life that will become part of that big puzzle picture that we're building as our future goal. So, what's the difference between your manifesting without spiritual guidance and you're manifesting with spiritual guidance? Well, manifesting your future with spiritual help and guidance from an activated spirit reconnection with the Lord relatively makes what you're seeing much easier to identify. Without God's guidance, all the legwork day after day is up to you and you alone. And we can often miss an opportunity or be confused as to which choice or decision in any event or circumstance may be in our best interest. We don't want to be sidetracked or sidelined by something that takes us off our goal and the path to that goal. With spiritual grounding in a relationship with the Lord, because you now have His Spirit within you, you can call upon His Spirit to guide your decision process. And because He wants what's best for you, His Spirit will allow you to eliminate the ones that are negative and that will automatically sidetrack you and keep you from the path of your goal. It comes down to, it's real simple. It's legwork with God's guidance versus legwork, legwork, legwork without His spiritual intervention. So be prepared to recognize opportunities. The question is how? Once you have your end goal in mind, have a plan to recognize each step that will take you closer. That is, step by step and opportunity by opportunity. Because now, with the Lord's Spirit working with you and for you, you'll be seeing benefits and negatives from each step along the way. As your path unfolds and your dream becomes a reality, one of the most important things is to have a plan. Let me give you a real life example. The Yale class of 1973 was asked how many had planned for their future, meaning how many had in mind, in their mind's eye, a definite goal and end reality for them. How many people had thought about where they would be in 20 years, in 10 years, in 5 years? And out of those, how many people actually had a plan written down with those goals in mind, a step-by-step process that would definitely get them closer to their end goal earlier? Well, it's interesting. 20 years later, they went back and reviewed with the people who they had asked to how many had the plan originally in 1973. And here's what they found. The 3% at the top of the list who had planned out their future and had goals in mind, in writing, were worth more than the other 97% combined. You see, this is the power of having a plan. And if you have it written down, by putting it in writing, it becomes real. When it's in our mind, it's just a vision or a thought. When we write it down, it becomes an actual step that we can start to look forward to on our path with the people, circumstances, and events that we come into contact with and that unfold. So, what are your time frames? Do you have time frames? How can you plan time frame schedules? Well, that's up to you. However, a good start would be a 10-year goal, a 5-year goal, a 3-year goal, 2 years, and finally 1 year. And then 6 months. The 6-month goal is the one you're going to focus on. All of the other years that I've just mentioned, you're going to have an idea of where you want to be at that time in your life. But focus on the 6-month goal. That's the one that you can actually put down in writing and have a good chance of accomplishing, because now you know where you're going. Will your plans change? Sure. Life throws us curveballs all the time. So we've got the goal, but as we go through our life, things may come at us, and we'll know now whether or not those new opportunities will fit into our next goal, or if it's something we should just not be concerned with and not bring it into its reality. For as we move into the future, many times we'll visualize what the next step can be, even though it may be changed or refined. The key is to keep relying on God's Spirit within you, because as a child of God, He always has your best interests at heart. And when you call upon His Spirit will give you advice. He will show you the future, negativity or positivity, in the choices and decisions that you have as your journey unfolds. On your journey, you'll be making better decisions instead of everything being a trial and error. And you won't be trying to put square pegs in round holes just to see if they fit. Or worse, be trying to convince them or force them into, which is common in Life 101. Life 101, we have a goal or a desire, and we want it so bad that sometimes we do just the opposite of what we should do, and we do just the wrong things to actually make it happen. 3 steps forward, 2 steps back. But with God's Spirit in your life, you'll know and sense what the best course of action is at every opportunity. Billy, I hope this helps. Thanks for your question. If you've got a question for us, call during the live show or email it to branch@isole.com. We'll take our final break. When we come back, we'll do our next week's preview. You're listening to Small Changes, Big Dividends on the Bold Brave Media TV and Talk Global Network. I'm your host, Branch Isole, and we'll be right back.
What if there were a super tiny device that could diagnose the brain and is smaller than a single human hair? What if you could see inside the brain to help an epilepsy patient during surgery or to help the fight against Parkinson's disease? Dr. Patricia Broderick is proud to announce the Broderick Probe, a biomedical and electronic breakthrough. Imagine a probe to help with the understanding and potential cure of brain-related diseases. To learn more, listen live to the Easy Sense radio show with host Dr. Broderick, Wednesdays 7 p.m. Eastern on the Bold Brave Media Network and TuneIn Radio. And to help support the Broderick Foundation, please go to EasySense.com and learn how, with your help, we can fight these horrific brain disorders. That's EasySense.com to learn more and help support the Broderick Foundation. Author, radio show host, and coach John M. Hawkins reveals strategies to help gain perspective, build confidence, find clarity, achieve goals. John M. Hawkins' new book, Coached to Greatness, Unlock Your Full Potential with Limitless Growth, published by iUniverse. Hawkins reveals strategies to help readers accomplish more. He believes the book can coach them to greatness. Hawkins says that the best athletes get to the top of their sport with the help of coaches, mentors, and others. He shares guidance that helps readers reflect on what motivates them, rediscover and assess their core values, philosophies, and competencies, find settings that allow them to be the most productive, and track their progress towards accomplishing goals. Listen to John Hawkins' My Strategy, Saturdays, 1 p.m. Eastern on the BBM Global Network and TuneIn Radio.
Welcome back. You're watching and listening to Small Changes, Big Dividends. I'm your host, Branch Isole. Next week, we'll continue our prophecy walk as we look to the Great Tribulation years and what the world can expect. We'll also have 2 more questions from our audience and listening. Thank you for joining me today. On Small Changes, Big Dividend, we discuss personal, career, and spiritual Christianity essentials for growth-filled living. If you know someone who could benefit from today's episode, please share it with them. If today's episode has been helpful for you, please let us know. Give us a rating and review. And to know more about my work, I invite you to visit my website, branchisole.com, or my YouTube channel, just Branch Isole. Today's show has been sponsored by Crystal Creek Farm. If you have a product, a business, or a service you'd like to share with the world on Small Changes, Big Dividends, send your inquiry to the website. You've been listening and watching Small Changes, Big Dividend on the Bold Brave Media TV and Talk Global Network. Until next week, be in the world, not of the world.
This has been Small Change, Big Dividends. When you're ready for healthier, more successful relationships at home or work, Small Change, Big Dividends is your show. Wednesdays, 4 p.m. Eastern on the Bold Brave TV Network.